Buongiorno.
Good morning. Welcome to the third day of this conference for the Fair Cities, Shaping Fair Cities project, European project funded by the European Commission and concerning the localization of the goals of the 2030 agenda. The Emilia-Romagna region is the leading partner of this project, and it involves several partners, Italian and international. We have the municipality of Modena, Reggio Emilia, Forlì, the University of Bologna, and we were GVC. And then we have international partners, Skotra, Albania, Split in Croatia, Romania, Iași, Poland, the region Vilkovoska, Spain with Alicante region, Denmark with the city of Vejle, and Sweden with the city of Felköping, and Spain with the city of Alicante. All these partners work together to localize the 2030 agenda and to raise awareness in their regions. So 3 days, the first one was for the municipalities in our area. They worked on these topics. 23 municipalities in the region worked with us in the different localization processes. They discussed their outcomes, outputs, and we saw how much citizenship was involved in these processes. We enjoyed theater performance, exhibitions, and the will of municipalities to create inclusive cities, exactly as the project says, shaping fair cities. And then on the second day, we saw the different outcomes of the project carried out by the players, the partners over these years. And today, we will have a first panel concerning gender, migration, and environment. And after the video, I will introduce the 3 panelists discussing about these topics. Thank you.
Buongiorno, vi presento ora.
Good morning. Let me introduce our guests, our panelists. We have Bianca Pomeranzi, expert for the UN Committee to fight against women discrimination, and expert of international cooperation, Raffaella Baccolini, chairwoman of the Women Association, and Patrizia Bianconi, senior expert in developing and coordinated regional, national and international projects on the topic of sustainable development. Now I'll give the floor to Mrs. Pomeranzi with a focus on gender equality. Thank you, and thank you for inviting me. Women allow me to be here to make a focus on gender. I have some slides in English, and in particular, I'm focusing on gender equality and women empowerment, SDG number 5. And I would like to point out some ideas that are at the grassroots of 2030 agenda and in relation to SDG number 5. And when negotiations started to develop the agenda at international level with an open working group, because despite the previous meetings of UN, this negotiation process involved several countries in the world and also some representatives of the civil society. So in this idea of sustainability, the agenda stresses the definition of sustainable development, which was already included in Brundtland report, and the idea of leaving no one behind. So human approaches linked to sustainable environmental development. This important aspect was possible thanks to the fact that gender inequalities were highlighted everywhere at global level. So this idea of gender equality and women's empowerment that was defined in the agenda has been linked to the global events, you know, at the beginning of the 20s. So from 20 years, moving to sustainable development goals. So over this 20 years, the UN system, together with the civil society and women's associations and movements, demonstrated that all global efforts, starting from the 70s and 80s, aiming at creating gender equality, actually did not enhance equality. On the contrary, some processes brought about by globalization were jeopardizing women's life. So it was possible to have one goal, you know, with for gender equality and women's empowerment, was thanks to the context where this agenda has been negotiated. And during that time, I was one of the persons negotiating the individual, every single target within goal number 5. These new global trends were based on an idea considering women victims of vulnerability, but not only vulnerable subjects, but also subjects embodying a huge transformation ability. We will see it even with the other panelists. So with this new vision on gender equality and women's empowerment, there is the ambition of build up gender equality, not just promoting gender equality. So the fact of building up gender equality is called by the UN Women the compact, so the pact between all the 2030 agenda stakeholders and the other partners in order to achieve these results, these goals. The great innovation is that among the goals that must be developed, fighting against violence is key, is crucial. And as I said before, when we discussed the 2030 agenda at global level, the scenario was hit by several wars in Afghanistan or the Middle East, and the impact of such conflicts on women and children, sexual violence. And it was also characterized by more than 30 years of work by the United Nations and the human rights systems against violence on women. This committee fighting against violence on women was created in 1993. Cedaw, since 2000, adopted a special protocol to check and to monitor the violent situation. Any treaties on, to fight against violence. So this made possible that in objective number, in goal number 5, so the first 3 targets were referring both to the discrimination and violence and stopping, for example, child marriages or forced marriages or genital mutilations. So any imposed act. So it is very important to have in a global pact, in a global agenda, to point out some results of the globalization. I will skip through some of the slides that I prepared because we do not have enough time, but I would like to focus on 2 concepts. The first is that goal number 5 points out that there are many types of women and many vulnerable conditions. And this is very important because it gives to the local body, to the area, to the region, a huge potential of knowing the specific needs. Because the agenda mentions all these aspects, and then the different stakeholders, so those who have to implement these procedures and processes in a coordinated way between public and private, must define their priorities. So this idea of intersectional approach. This intersectional approach is really important, and as you can see, it also meets the needs of women, of group of women working within local bodies or working in women's movements. So this intersectional approach is also developed by younger generations. The other idea that I think it's very important, to which the 2030 Agenda and SDG 5 provides an answer, is the topic of global care chains. It was studied between the 90s and the year 2000, and it created the switch of caregiving towards the elderly and children from women in the south towards other northern regions, but also other areas, even going outside the borders, but also within the borders, because the caregiving, work is now paid, in particular due to the reduction in public welfare. And so this became a real supply chain. And this chain boosted women's migration. So on this topic of women's migration, cities have a huge power of attraction, and I'm not just referring to the northern cities, the cities of the northern part of the world, but also in the south, where you have migration flows, sometimes by low-skilled women, which are at a greater risk of sexual, gender-based violence or human rights violations. I'm thinking about some African countries where you literally use girls, little girls, or some migrants coming from the Southeast Asia, kept in-house without any documents as slaves. So the target 5.4 in these SDG, so it is referring to the the not paid care work or caregiving, and so the unpaid care, domestic work, this is a crucial topic, and it requires an international pact so that this work can be dealt with in a decent condition. As for COVID-19, this has exacerbated and showed how important is this topic of caregiving. And of course, the impact on women on the entire world, there was a loss in jobs, so job loss, in particular for women. And so, and now we have most vulnerable subjects, and for example, migrant women in this healthcare field are manifold, they are not recognized. So in all this, and implement, I mean, the new global emergencies pointed out by 2030 agenda for women, but not just for them, I mean, for all the public at large. And I talked about violence, equality, the decision-making equality, and the development of sustainable goals. But in reality, another important topic of the agenda is to include the attention on women even in other goals, for example, poor quality jobs or the good governance, fighting against feminicide, and another aspect that is very important concerns global partnerships. We are in a program where we want to develop partnerships as they are outlined by the agenda. So public sector, civil society, women, civil society. So they are the real drivers promoting the agenda, and in particular, the local body, the local entity, which can provide prompt responses to the possibility and ability that this SDG number 5 can be considered in both ways. So from the point of view of vulnerability, so the first 3 targets, and the empowerment aspect, so the last targets focusing on the need for providing economic resources, favoring women, and to open the way to digitization, in particular digital divide is a cause of exclusion in this world. And focusing on the different forms of vulnerability that you might find in urban and non-urban contexts. So the different ways of managing social welfare must consider must carry out an analysis of the area by defining women's needs and leaving the possibility to the agencies to focus on their own needs, and then the ability to verify, to read plans with that gender vision and an intersectional gender vision, which means drafting social gender-based balances, and to promote responses by creating inclusion. So that the collection of resources to promote this aspect is included in the planning activity of a specific area, and the possibility of creating new pacts with several agents, economic and social stakeholders in particular. So I think, and I've always thought, that this is an important point, because it's the area where women potential can be better expressed, and aside the different laws they must find policies ensuring continuity to women's potential. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Fondamentali.
Thank you very much, Bianca, for stating these fundamental concepts. Leaving no one behind is a basic concept of the 2030 agenda. And now going back to vulnerability and empowerment, to fundamental concepts that the public administration shall have to consider when developing their policies. Now, Raffaella Baccolini, the President of the Women's Association, Associazione Women, who was part of the project to take the floor. They have contributed largely to all the products made or prepared for this project, both international cooperation projects as well as awareness-raising campaigns in the surrounding areas. So what is women policy concerning this cross-functional aspect in relation with these policies? Well, thank you very much. I would like to state that the partnership represents or mirrors the spirit of women, an association that enjoys the cooperation and that sees cooperation and solidarity as central elements. It gathers public entities, regions, municipalities, universities, as well as various associations. Therefore, the synergy created amongst the various agents, as Bianca mentioned during her presentation, is a source of inspiration for women. I would like to quote Bianca when she says that we shouldn't just promote gender equality, but rather build it, create and build on it. Prevention isn't possible if there's no culture of prevention. So we need to change things, and in this respect, women would like to be a driving force for cultural change to take place. I believe that these topics are surely very important and should be the center of future action at women, and we hope that we can also participate in other projects and be active on the field with these initiatives. I believe also that the topic of violence, the topic of rights, education are very topical in this moment. They're central in today's discussion, and the pandemic has shown how capable women are to be engaged, and also how rights that we consider as acquired and well established never are. So one has to continuously work on these topics, strengthening cooperation and strengthening strategic networks. This is the reason why Europe can be considered a major strength in this situation. Well, thank you very much, and thank you to the partnership of the Associazione Women. But before we go over to the next themed focus, we would like to show you a video on green cities.
Passiamo ora al secondo focus tematico.
Now, second theme focused concerning climate change, and climate policies will be explained to us by Patrizia Bianconi, Region Emilia-Romagna. Thank you, Patrizia, and thank you. Actually, it's an honor for me to be here this morning with you. And I will briefly reconsider the main aspects of Goal 13, climate action. I will, of course, review the policies of past years as well as the new policies for the future on the topic of change. As you can see, climate change introduces four main topics. First of all, then, when talking about climate action, we shouldn't just refer to mitigation and how we can reduce our emissions of gases that alter the climate, but rather consider adaptation to climate changes. It is an irreversible trend, and we see this happening in various parts of the globe where we conduct our activities. We know that climate change is impacting on everything, so ranging from industrial to non-industrial societies. So adaptation plans have got to be conceived so that the production methods or modalities and living conditions may change so as to get adjusted to a situation that can no longer be entirely reversed. Then policy integration. Climate changes are cross-functional changes that pervade the entire public administration. When talking about health, for example, as well as housing, industry, transportation. Of course, I could mention many more, but I'm sure that when we give a look at the regional policies, we will get back to this. Another key target that is part of the climate action is creating a gender culture for the climate emergency. Awareness raising is the key word in this respect, because climate changes, fighting climate change is something that needs to be faced at all levels. China, America, India have got to be involved into this, but we also have to take actions at our levels. Citizens should also be involved, each and every one according to one's own competencies and institutional role, but we know that we can decide how we can consume, travel, or where to go and how to go on holiday. All these things may have an impact on emissions and adaptation. These new behaviors should be as widespread as possible. This is why education and awareness raising are required. Other targets are very important as well. For example, in the region Emilia-Romagna, that is a region which is quite committed to cooperating with other countries, and where we are used to facing the impact of emergencies. We know that the poorest countries are the lowest contributors to emissions to the atmosphere, such as, for example, India or Africa. They have not contributed largely to the production of climate-altering gases, but they are badly affected by their effect. I've just taken a look at an international report that shows that 70 to 75% of all migration flows that have gone from South America to the southern eastern part of the world has been displaced due to the effect of climate changes and climate-caused catastrophes. The report also highlighted the micro regions that are mainly affected by such migrations as a consequence of climate change. The region Emilia-Romagna is now completing the pathway for the construction of its Agenda 2030, and climate change or action, climate action is part of it. Last December, a Pact for Work and Climate was created, and the current government has been concentrating on climate as well as on work, quality labor, and equality. The region Emilia-Romagna has therefore set two major objectives, being carbon neutral before 2050 and hopefully to be also capable of having 100% renewable energy sources by the year 2035. These are very ambitious objectives, and you can see how the region intends to transpose this action, this SDG 13, into practice. Another very important activity that needs to be promoted is the integration of our policies. So plans, laws, regional laws should all be consistent and consider this important theme at the center of their development. Another important element is a challenge that we need to face vis-à-vis disequalities, inequalities, where the weakest brackets of society have been impacted more heavily. As I mentioned before, floods and other catastrophes are some of the events that impact on the migration or movements of the weakest layers of society. This is why we have defined the regional pathway towards carbon neutrality before the year 2050. We will be acting at all levels and hopefully we will have a climate law at the regional level as soon as possible, whereby a series of regional policies will have to be defined in more detail. But now let's concentrate on the meaning of all this. Taking a look at the graphs for climate variability, you can observe that climate changes in this region is already taking place, and these are the modifications to the minimum and maximum temperatures in our region, including rainfalls. So summers are hotter and hotter, and winter have changed too. Also the rainfalls average has increased enormously. This is a climate projection on future scenarios for the time period 2021 to 2050. So when talking about the year 2050, we then think, well, it's now 2021, it will take a long time to get there, but actually it's not a linear progression. These are scenarios that have been outlined until the year 2050, but of course we have to make step forwards every day. The meaning of those graphs show that we have had an increase in temperature of 1.5 to 2.5 degrees. It seems to be not too much, but actually this impacts heavily, for example, on cultures. This impacts on the quantity of water utilized for watering the fields, and it impacts, as we have seen in recent days, that there are heat waves and tropical nights, as well as very heavy rains. So rainfalls are increasing by far in autumn, and there are instead days that are 100% dry for a long time. So let's take a look now at the atmosphere altering gases. You see data provided from the Osservatorio Energia. You see that we have had quite a few problems in reducing emissions. We managed to reduce them by 6–7%, but this is still too little. Extra efforts have to be made, as mentioned before, also on the basis of new policies that this regional government would like to put in place. And of course, you see the percentages of the per sector of activity, energy and cities, and how they impact on the single aspects. What can we do at the international level? The President and the region, before the Paris Agreement in 2015, signed a memorandum of understanding whereby we committed ourselves to reducing emissions by 80%. The MOU is being now reviewed. We have 220 subnational governments from California to Baden-Württemberg and state regions or subnational governments that have different proxies and roles. And our region is one of the very few Italian regions that have adhered to the MOU. The MOU participants are agreeing on a carbon neutrality target. We've been the first region to participate to the UNFCCC campaign, Race to Zero, involving businesses, multinational companies, other regions. This is why we feel committed to this objective, as our action would carry out a climate diplomacy action. At the regional level, a regional strategy is being approved to mitigate and adjust ourselves to the new climate conditions. We also have a regional forum for climate changes, and we would like to define a form of support and aid to local bodies in order to define indicators that help us measuring or monitoring the energy and climate plans. We have to measure things also in terms of adaptation and mitigation. This is the regional report, as a long one, more than 100 pages. And I mentioned earlier on regional strategies for mitigation and adjustment. So all the sectoral policies have been defined. We have some adaptation and mitigation actions that should be then framed into some regional sectoral plans through which we will develop a mainstreaming process within the administration. The regional strategy has been a quite long process involving all the regional stakeholders who have to tackle the issues of climate changes. At the same time, we have set up the forum. These are the various risk areas we have identified. Climate changes in the main have a series of consequences that I'm not going to list, but here you see the different sectors in line with the national strategy for adaptation to climate changes. We range from forestry, water, wastes, landslides, economic factors, tourism, fishing, fishery. This means that in the light of these scenarios I mentioned at the start, we can see what the region has already done, the targets achieved, but also what needs to be done in terms of meeting the adaptation targets. When talking about actions, we cannot consider regions as being all at the same levels. There are regions that are plain regions, others are mountainous regions only, and therefore for each type of area one needs to specify the impact caused by climate change on a sector-by-sector basis and put them into homogeneous categories. Urban areas contribute largely to this, more than 1/3. The strategy requires actions that should be both sectoral as well as cross-functional. The Regional Forum has been launched in 2019. It is an active forum that involves local bodies, businesses and citizens in an effort to educate and raise their awareness. And they provide support to the local bodies, for example, in monitoring the climate and regional and energy plans, so in a logic of reducing emissions and being capable of adapting to the new situation at the local level. You see here that the most important or one of the most important things we did was that we provided to each and every participant all the indicators for climate vulnerability. So the idea is to have a common ground for adaptation vis-a-vis all the local administrations we are working with. And here are ARPA and other bodies. We have to now downscale the values in a grid of 5 by 5 kilometers at the local level, according to which we will know how climate will evolve from now until the year 2050. These documents are available online on the regional website, on the climate platform. Our municipalities and cities can build their adaptation plans at their local level. I would like to thank you for your attention, and I'm available for any question you may have. Thank you, Patrizia, for this very exhaustive presentation, and I'm sure that these figures will have to make us ponder the situation. 70% of extreme events are caused by climate changes, 30% are caused by wars. These are information that the majority of citizens is not aware of, and therefore public administrations should always make this data and information available to citizens. So we are committed on these very important issues on a daily basis. And the climate diplomacy is a topic that the regions feel very much committed to. Also at international level, they are a priority for us and for all the public administration. I would like to thank you, and now the floor has, and now we will continue with the third session. We start with the presentation video, and you will see the connection between climate changes and migration, and then we will continue with Professor Boracetti from the University of Bologna.
Siamo di nuovo online e passiamo.
We are back now. Let's see the third focus concerning migration. The University of Bologna has been an important partner for all our policies, in particular within this project, where they developed scientific tools. And in particular, I'm referring to a toolkit for localizing the agenda, and they also carried out some surveys among citizens to investigate their awareness as for these topics of migration. Now we have Marco Borracetti from the University of Bologna. Good morning. I'm sorry. I'm moving, so due to personal reasons, I was not able to join you in presence. So I would like to excuse myself, accept my apologies, but it has been a fruitful project. So the University of Bologna was the only university involved in this project. It has been an enriching, enlightening experience, both from a technical and from a personal point of view. So Dr. Casini, Mrs. Scissa, and other colleagues were involved in this project. The fact of being the only one university has been very important to us for two reasons. First of all, because we wanted to understand which are the needs of local entities from a practical viewpoint as regards migration, and another effort concerning the language adopted and the relationship between study on the one side, the theory and practical implementation. During one of the meetings we organized, I remember that we were asking to one of the municipalities included in the program, we asked them how many migrants they had in the area or if they had refugees. And they said none, but in reality, they just use another term. They define them as minorities. So over the course of the project, we explained this idea, the fact of recognizing rights. If we recognize rights to migrant workers, to refugees, to asylum seekers, both at internal level and at European international level, the fact of defining them as minority, it means we do not recognize their rights. And calling them as minority, of course, this brings about other consequences like the voting right and so on and so forth. This is just to explain how difficult and challenging was this topic. So some topics are even more challenging than others because they, like in this case, they, for example, have a different language of expression. So as for our activities within the project, we implemented this toolkit, as you mentioned. We also carried out some surveys, in particular with regard to the perception of the importance of sustainable development goals, and in particular in relation to migration and the environment. So we conducted this survey at the beginning and at the end of this project, and the impact of COVID-19 on the survey has been incredible because, of course, the interviews originally thought in the street, of course, had to be converted to the digital mode. We are still collecting data over these days, so we will soon be able to provide you with a comparative analysis. And what emerged from the first survey was anyway very interesting, because at times the sensitivity of people is higher compared to what we might envisage, or even higher than the lawmakers or the rulers. So at local level, I think the awareness is higher. So when we talk about SDG number 6 and the access to drinkable water or to the health services, of course, this is something that is perceived even in our cities, in our communities, when we refer to the gender loss or to the access to a healthy environment or the need for a quality education or the reduction of poverty, we often think about maybe this image of a very far away and remote village, but indeed these topics are perceived even at local level. So sensitivity permeates any range of age. When we talk about policies in relation to migration, I would like to focus on other aspects. So SDGs can be reconducted to migration. Some are upstream, this phenomenon, some others are downstream. Upstream, for example, if we consider several issues, we might include, for example, fight against poverty, and so SDG number 1, or zero hunger, gender equality, SDG number 5, drinkable water, or the fact of accessing water resources, SDG number 6, the reduction and the reduction of inequalities, sustainable cities and communities where we can reduce inequalities, so SDG number 11, or the responsible consumption, but also peace, justice, and strong institutions, number 16. If we consider the downstream goals, could be number 4, quality education and economic growth, and number 8. Because when we talk about migration, we have to consider the form of integration, how integration takes place. And for example, school. This is the most important form of integration. And the fact of ensuring decent work for anyone. That could be work conditions, but also payment. So the fact of ensuring, and promoting decent work, regardless the citizenship and the origin, it means avoiding these conflicts among poor people, because you do not compete, against another person who is already having a hard times. So if you remember, for example, the exploitation among agricultural laborers, and that's a problem that exists for almost a decade, And after the economic crisis of 2008, we suddenly realized that this problem, this work problem, involved even Italian citizens, not just foreigners. So we are all in this. It means that we need to ensure a better integration because we want to avoid any form of conflict. So all these SDGs can also include migration, even if they don't mention it. Only once there is an explicit reference to migration, number 10, so goal number 10, and in its target number 7 talks about a safe, responsible, regular migration in order to ensure the right for mobility. So we should wonder if this SDG can be reachable and how can we attain this goal. So the fact of regulating migration flows, we can agree on this, like, for example, by applying specific forces, like by regulating the flows, or how can we regulate migration by ensuring, accessing pathways. This is, of course, a right that is included in the Human Rights Declaration, but it is also balanced with the right of states of checking who comes in the country, but also to regulate the accesses. So if you think about the policies over the last year, regardless the parties, the political parties, migration has always been linked to the idea of protecting borders, not from the standpoint of ensuring safe access ways or safe tools leading to a safe migration. And so considering security and safety, both from the state point of view, but also from the point of view of these migrants, therefore to avoid their death while reaching the countries by sea or due to labor exploitation. So the different policies were not properly planned over the last years. If you consider to the legal access points, we talked about like humanitarian corridors, but not to create a system where you can have this access access points in order to allow migrants to look for a job or even to leave the country. So this is a critical point. There is still a lot to do in this field. As for migration sustainability, in the SDGs, they do not refer to environmental migration. So there's forced migrations due to environmental reasons. That could be natural disasters, desertification, or even industrial accidents having an impact on environment. There is only one document of 2015 talking about environmental migration, stressing this aspect, and is the Paris Treaty, COP21, which was drafted a few days later after the Bataclan massacre. So in this treaty, there is a reference to delocalized people due to environmental reasons, and they mentioned the need for minimizing forced movements, for forced migration. What does it mean to minimize forced displacement? So it's not like what we have heard to help them in their, where they live in their country. It means to allow people to choose what to do, to remain in their country or to opt for another location. If I live in Bologna and I want to remain here, I should be able to do so, or if I want to move to other regions or countries, I should be able to do so. And I would like to stress another important point, the importance of the European scale. So we are part of a fantastic project and a fantastic situation because we are free to move from one country to another. And this model for years has been considered as an exportable program. And there are some other pacts in Africa, for example, which are trying to replicate our model. But now we are hindering this model. We are trying to, stop the access of people into this part of the world. So this is a mistake. We need to respect, to apply, to meet the different SDGs. So aside this idea of sustainability, or aside documents or words on ecological transition, we should still focus on migration. In documents concerning ecological transition, they do not mention migration. And we have to be convinced of the fact that our policies could have an impact on other countries, the countries of origin of these migrants. And so we have to focus on this to be able to ensure what until today we are not able to ensure, and in particular to create some safe access ways, both from the point of view of checking borders, but also on the point of view of ensuring safe conditions to migrants. Thank you very much for this speech, Marco. Over the years, we were able to work on these issues, and last week in Bertinoro, there was this international summer school. If you can just explain briefly what it was. We created a network among local bodies, and as you said, the University of Bologna was the only one included in the project, but we wanted to widen this network and to involve other universities, foreign universities. So we organized this international summer school where we hosted students both in presence and at a distance. So if you can explain this summer school. So we are really satisfied of this summer school. We organized this summer school in a blended version, so students, Italian students in present and Italian and foreign students online. More than 35 students took part in this project. And it means that this topic is highly perceived. We dealt with these topics from different points of views. We talked about human trafficking, asylum seekers, protecting, and the gender equality topics. We involved other colleagues coming from other universities, and they, were invited online, and so this was a great success. So the feedback and of course, the requests we received are an example of how these topics are highly and warmly perceived. So we think maybe in the future we can organize other activities. Sometimes these topics may not be considered as scientific oriented, but it's not true. They are intersectional topics, and they have really a cross-sectional nature. This is the added value of our summer school, and it was the first summer school in presence after the pandemic. And this was extremely positive, in my opinion. I would like to ask you one last question, so a couple of minutes for the answer. We talked about rights, we talked about the central role of people and policies. In your opinion, how public policies can involve citizens proactively? How can they allow citizens to feel a proactive part of them? I think that the social dialogue and the partnership with the civil society and the private sector is one of the great potential of local bodies at regional level. So women gathered a lot, and we transformed Italy, starting from women, and we started from the local level. So the UN agendas were born from this, you know, after the conferences of the 90s on globalizations, where civil society really highlighted issues that unfortunately are still there, unsolved, but this is what the civil society can do, you know, to give voice to different topics. I think that one of the take-home messages of this morning is the importance of synergies, partnerships among associations, public administration, local bodies, and universities. So I think that the fact of funding projects like this one, or law number 6 of the region, I think that all these tools can enhance the different collaboration among the stakeholders. Patrizia, so apart from creating events and activities that are specifically addressing the civil society, could be a forum or building documents that can talk to the different types of targets, school or citizens. And the Emilia-Romagna region already started to walk this way, because we signed a document including social partners, the third sectors, environmental associations for the first time. They are involved because we also want to deal with the climate topic, the business field. So the fact of signing a pact, of course, the region maybe has a high number of functions and skills, but all the other partners are co-designers of this pact. So we share goals, and so social partners, of course, they come from the third sector and so on, the civil society, but they are also citizens. Marco? I agree with what my colleague said, but I think there is also the role of local bodies of raising awareness and informing citizens. It's an honor and a burden, but it's really fundamental. Sometimes we tend to think that citizens are not interested by these topics, but I do not think it is true. I think they should, and they would like to be informed about the activities carried out at local level, for example, regional level, as for SDGs and as for rights. So as for right protection, I think this could be the added value. So thank you. I would like to thank our guests, Bianca Pomeranzi, Patrizia Bianconi, Raffaella Baccorini, and Marco Boraccetti. Thank you.
Eccoci di nuovo qui con una nuova.
So we're back with the new session of First Cities Days session in the framework of the Shaping the Cities funded by the EU. So we will be talking about education and civil society. Paola Berbeglia and Margherita Romanelli of WeWorld GVC are with us. Now, during these days, and starting from the day before yesterday, we mentioned school and education. Many municipalities have created programs talking or centering on this topic. We've been talking as well about global citizenship in an effort to understand how the topic of globalization should be part of public policies. Now, as an expert in the field and as a delegate to global citizenship for AOE, please tell us more about this education project on global citizenship and tell us more about the ways in which this could be received by the public administration. Thank you, Mirella, and thank you for the invitation. It's a great honor to be with you today. And I will now talk about the national strategy topic and education to global citizenship that was approved of on June the 11th and by the Interministerial Coordination body. And I will talk about the 4.7 objective, which is linked with the social citizenship education that is part of the Shaping for Cities project. And it was an outstanding example of it. In fact, it provided evidence of how activities like the ones we are conducting can be carried out and become a reality within the framework of the awareness raising of global citizens. So all this is set in motion thanks to the involvement of the region and local entities, as well as civil society organizations. In other European countries, this strategy was already widespread and was functioning pretty well, also on the basis of the background that relied upon forms of developments, maybe not yet sustainable developments, but it was then translated in a transformative way and made accessible to various stakeholders. We're used to thinking that global citizenship education only concerns schools primarily. If you access this document that you can find on the internet, and I invite you all to do that, you will notice that there are very many actors. So, for example, the labor world, media environment, the role of the trade unions, universities, and schools, as well as of the Agenzia Giovani, the agency for youth. So all of them were not included or were not part of it. Now, this is the moment we should talk about this new perspective. So talking about 4.7 means talking of education for sustainable development and global citizenship, which is part of Sustainable Objective number 4, which talks about quality education. But global citizenship is characterized by the human proactive commitment and mobilization aspect in a transformative agenda. The world is a common good, hence, by respecting the mandate of Agenda 2030, that is, do not leave anyone behind, we should prepare, as Asvis clearly mentions, we should involve all the stakeholders on the basis of a new mindset. A pre-requirement for acquiring all of the sustainable objectives targets have been defined, and here you see the latest UN report on Goal 4. Data go back to April 2021, and what is clear to see is that as part of Goal 4 and 4.7, we cannot but talk about the pandemic. The reason is that in terms of global citizenship, shutting down schools, or also considering that hundreds of thousands of school children who had to stay at home couldn't learn in a natural manner as they deserve, or as you can see here, 2 in 3 students have been affected by school closures, and especially for the most vulnerable students, this was a quite serious problem which has impacted on practices that are very important, especially in terms of school, women, forced labor, forced marriages, and minor or child work. Here you can see that 101 million children have had to break down the standard school proficiency or achievements, and this in its turn has is something that will only be recovered in the year 2024, making efforts in terms of both strategies and means to be utilized. Before the pandemic, 53% of young people completed their secondary school. This, of course, to go back to topics that are related also with the same trends in sub-Saharan Africa, where that percentage was only 29%. Now, you see that in terms of the duration of the school closure, we have noted that poverty has been further increased by the pandemic, and we have had more obstacles to overcome, for example, for disadvantaged children, or also due to lack of devices and networks and cables, which could bring us back in terms of global learning. Let's take a look at the gender indicators, a topic that has been very important in the making of this project. 92 women out of 100 aged 15 years in 2019. Actually, there's a major difference in terms of higher education, so at university level. Women were for sure less equipped than other layers of the population who were better off in terms of learning. Now, those of us who deal with the global citizenship on top of our Italian Agency for Cooperation to Development, as well as the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Research and Environment, and the Agency for Youth, the cities, municipalities, all these entities, such as UNESCO, for example, are strongly involved in these global citizenship education activities. UNESCO and the OECD have clarified that there are no studies on the impact of 4.7 on adult population, which is a big flaw in the system which we need to make up for. C20 EWG group participates actively in the G20, and in the coming weeks, on the 23rd and 24th, we will have joint ministerial meetings between education and labor. And the G20 is working with civil society, but there are still limitations due to the fact that most and above all we deal with school. The OECD has organized the PISA survey along with the YEA surveys or others that are utilized for acquiring information on globalization. We will see what results have been obtained. And now, concerning the Commission, in the framework of the new financial program, the Commission is restructuring the program for education to global citizenship, and by the 15th we will have to concretely contribute to that program, providing concrete inputs to the program. There is an historical working group within this forum for the inclusion of strategy in a widespread fight to inequalities, and the ways in which citizenship and education impact on this trend. Solidar is working on the labor world and trade union environment, always stressing the ECG strategies. You can see here some indicators that are still being reviewed concerning the 4.7 target. This screenshot has been given to us by UNESCO. There is a distinction between global citizenship education and education for sustainable development. But this debate is not so relevant or fundamental, because being active citizens means adopting a common good perspective in sustainable development view. So in practice, in practical labor, the grassroots organizations are key. They help us and This slide shows the working group that is working on this. They started off in Spain in 2017, and their activities are progressing. And here a screenshot of the approach for each level of education, so the policies dealing with the global citizenship. You see, for example, assessment of students with the teacher education, with the policies, and so on and so forth. So some places for the application of these measures have been searched for. So if we would be interested in that, they would offer hospitality to us. That was the PISA study, and now some results of the work session that dates back to the year 2018. Still, we haven't got any results on this surveys, as these are 3-year studies, 3-year surveys. All these slides and the following ones provides an insight on the perception after the pandemic. In red, you see Italy, and in the big blue line is the OECD position. Interviewed students seem to be quite well aware of the issues. And here you see a comparison between Singapore and the rest of the OECD average. You can see how the southeastern countries are reacting. They feel that they are global citizens much more so than EU or United States students. So I hope that you can also read the perceptions vis-à-vis global topics and cross-matched with social and economic variables. Here, instead, you see a couple of slides on gender differences, on gender equality or inequality. Girls sometimes do not have the necessary means to assess this, and the same applies to migrant populations. Their level of sensitivity to citizenship is high if they are adequately trained beforehand. So it is not an automatic process. These are competencies that you acquire and that you make grow over time. You will receive these slides for sure at the conclusion of this event, and let's now take a look at the activities connected with the Shaping Fair Cities project. A very direct action has been conducted vis-à-vis the local authorities and local bodies, so the results obtained are very interesting, and we will continue to work on them. The MBI-ACI New European project will include global citizenship actions, so concerning European funds, all the local entities, and with the involvement of the region, both now and in the future. Well, we believe that all these represent opportunities, and positive change are really interesting. And the local authorities, you see 460 local authorities have been involved, therefore obtaining good results through the programs funded by the European Union. 2,600 NGOs at the European level have been supporting this process, working mainly on the Green New Deal and Next Generation EU. In the next 4-year period, we expect more connections to emerge, especially in connection with the green topic. Solidar promotes the idea of the global citizenship, and they are developing, along with other entities in the private sphere, further initiatives in this respect. Here you see global citizenship, education, and civil organization societies have included all these micro objectives in the dialogue with the G20. Main objectives are utilization of resources, long life learning, global citizenship education, as well as gender promotion and transformative learning. So I strongly advise you to take part in the dialogue. Concord Italia will have an open day on July 1st. You're all invited to participate, both the civil society organizations as well as other interested parties and stakeholders, so that we can best cooperate in this field. Thank you. And thank you very much, Paola, for this very clear presentation. Yesterday we have seen a documentary for the Castelfranco municipality. The title was Stranieri, Foreigners. Going back to the global citizenship concept, I would like to remind you that citizens from Southeastern Europe, Asia, showed a greater propension to this. In fact, these young people were quite displaced when talked about these issues. They felt that in their country there was a great variety of people, and that there was a very natural attitude in getting in touch with different people, or in interfacing or contacting different people. So in fact, I think that what you're saying is quite fairly well mirrored into this. Yes, and Thailand is co-chair in following the issue of global citizenship, and my colleague from the Asian Development Network is working with me, working on democracy and local authorities. So we're fully in agreement. And the topic of global citizenship, as we said during the first day, is being discussed at various national workshop and meetings coordinated by the ministry, with the Ministry of the Environment, Education, the regions. And the idea was to get an understanding of the ways in which this strategy can be applied and how local bodies can help us in putting this strategy in place, as much as it happened for this national sustainable development strategy. Now, Ms. Romanelli, an historical partner from the region Emilia-Romagna in international and European projects. We have been working on some projects together, and her presence was very important in the Shaping for Cities. We have shared the activities from the very start. We have shared the results as well, and the main action lines. Now I would like Margherita to talk about this local authorities project. 2 NGOs were present at the start, then the Polish one withdrew due to internal projects. So We World GVC was the only NGO connected into this activity out of 14 local bodies. So I would like to have your opinion concerning the participation to this partnership, where the majority were local bodies. So GVC could contribute to a large extent, and then the localization of Agenda 2030. In this respect, I would like to know how civil society can intervene and what is its role. Thank you, Margherita.
Thank you, Mirella. First, let me thank you personally, and I would like to thank the Emilia-Romagna region as well for this work that we have carried out over the last 3.5 years. Challenging, but very important. Of course, topics are not so easy, but we deployed a global effort in order to progress, to develop, to deal with these topics and to improve, enhance the management of these complex goals, which is the big challenge of the 2030 agenda. And this project involved a large number of partners, and even from geographical point of view, so we open up different debate ends. As for the role of GVC as a civil society representative within the project, it was a co-design, so we were there right from the beginning, so we felt at ease in this project. Participation and involvement is key, is crucial in the development of projects, and when it is expressed in a practical way, when you create different dialogue opportunities and exchange situations in the analysis phase, the construction phase, in identifying goals, indicators, how we can measure up these goals, and the pathway that we have to walk together. So in those cases, the differences that can represent a limit in some cases, they remain there. They can reduce any mistrust that can happen among different subjects, and so they can, of course, sometimes be relevant. So as for our experience in terms of civil society, in order to think about the goals, the objectives, and the role of civil society that can and must have within the 2030 agenda. We wanted to deploy specific activities in involving the civil society in order not to, of course, consider that we are enough as an organization, but to have the need, to multiply, to involve other voices, other subjects, other exchange opportunities, sharing opportunities, initiatives, and so to open up the participation. So our role was to widen and to open the project to other subjects that could be multipliers, so could have a multiplying effect. And then we wanted to involve other voices of the civil society in several steps, like planning, implementing, in order to focus on what could be useful to change the approach, therefore creating a transversal partnership which is included in 2030 agenda with goal number 17. We think that civil society has the opportunity to propose development models representing experiences that in the private sector or the civil society has to deal with in their daily activities. So it's trying to push forward to launch new ideas to boost this development towards the SDGs. And we tested this because over this last 3 years, we implemented more than 60 experiences of best practices, and they were all promoted, you know, from the grassroots with a bottom-up approach. So it means that this country is really, enlightening. They are ready. We are ready to seize the challenges and also to rethink this model of sustainable development. On the other side, civil society by nature can be closer to citizens, so they can play the role of, you know, facilitators of link connection between public administration and citizens, even non-organized citizens, or even if they are organized in an informal way. And this dialogue, of course, it's even stronger and more powerful when you get close to the public administration, because this happens when, you know, you talk to local bodies such as municipalities, provinces, and regions. So where this ease of relationship is even stronger. On the other side, the other element of the civil society in the implementation of the goals of the 2030 agenda, it's an element of watchdog. So watchdogging, what does it mean? It means making sure that these goals can be translated into practical actions at local level for citizens, and so having an impact, a fruitful impact, so that these SDGs can be implemented. So from this point of view, during our workshop and training sessions, we met more than 300 people, citizens, but also business leaders or trade union representatives, and experts such as experts coming from school, university. So, and what is the current vision of 2030 agenda? We all identify an incredible opportunity, a very strong opportunity. They recognize the basic principles, so that, for example, linked to the right protection, and this is the most important element. And on the other side, we saw that there is a will to understand how you can implement these goals, you know, on site. So what are the plans at local level? What are the plans of the region within the 2030 agenda context? What are the shared plans? So this project really captured an open need. On the other side, we want to understand how we can take part in it as citizens. And so the request, and I'm the spokesperson for it, is to create structured moment and of dialogue, of, so to have this moment of sharing in a continuous way. So we know that we start today, that there are several moments in which we can share our thoughts and opinions, and citizens can assess the progress of this pathway, of this process, and to receive a feedback by the public administration, how maybe these tasks, are deployed or not, and that this dialogue can therefore find ongoing moments, not just ad hoc, so that we can create a systematic approach, therefore removing this sectorial behavior and approach. The other important aspect is to try and attach importance to the 2030 agenda. So on many occasions they asked us, what is the enforcement level? How can we apply it? So we focus on applicability. We said that it can be applied all together. So our request is to give practical targets and economic resources. So read once again the planning, so that we can clearly define what is the participation and the commitment in applying the 2030 agenda. Because the citizens and the civil society wants to play a real and genuine and proactive role, and therefore ensuring their commitment. Because, of course, it is considered as a crucial opportunity. Thank you, Margherita. So this topic of being a facilitator, the role of the civil society, but also as watchdog. It's not maybe a nice word, but it gives the idea. And it is very important. And so we have, as you said, we need to have some structured and well-organized moments of exchange before we listen to the presentation about the Joint Pact for Climate. So your speech leads us to the next panel, so the localization of the 2030 agenda. So we would like to introduce our guests. So we have Monica Zembriska. As for ROPS, Annette Grunet-Weile, Ilerchikos, for the city of Shodra, Romania, BRCT, Victor, then for Reggio Emilia, and Tony Jerkovic for Split, Pilar Sol for the city of Alicante, and Paola Berbeglia for the municipality of Modena, that I now give the floor, and so she will lead and moderate this session. Thank you.
Grazie.
Thank you very much. It's me again, and so maybe if you think it's possible to show the slides, that would be very helpful. Otherwise, I will improvise. but if that would be possible, it would be great. So I think I need to I will start by welcoming you to this last session of these 3 Shaping Fair Cities Days. This is very important as it is a moment where we are increasing our level of awareness, which is always helpful at the end of a project. It gives us an opportunity to see how we can configure the way ahead, and we can review the lessons learned. What can we take home as a new message? I will be brief indeed, and I will consider a couple of points which the partner regions have considered. After Margherita's presentation, we will now talk about the local bodies. What have we done in Modena? So we started off with some statements that you see here concerning the 2030 agenda in general terms and sustainability of current development model, and the fact that every country has got to define its own system and strategy, while at the same time the implementation of the agenda requires the strong involvement of all social parties, from the private to the public sector, from civil society to the so-called philanthropic institutions that we will call civil society organizations, and from universities to research centers and information operators. What is the OECD helping us doing? Localizing the SDGs is a publication that the OECD is putting in place for the local and regional authorities in terms of developing political and action plan approaches connected with the SDGs. The OECD is doing this through 3 main objectives. One is the measurement of where cities and regions stand or are on the SDGs. So they have put in place a very interesting measurement system that is quite interesting. We will see an example with the city of Modena. This also explains an account for the importance of the role of cities in acquiring the SDGs. 105 out of 161 SDGs cannot be acquired without the contribution of cities and regions, and it also shares best practices and lessons learned at the international level. Publication is available online. It's called The Territorial Approach to the Sustainable Development Goals, which also provides interesting insights. This year, in July, the high-level political forum will take place. It is a moment where the UN will reconsider the implementation of policies. So these are voluntary reviews that nations adopt on a voluntary basis. But in more recent years, more voluntary actions could have taken place at the local level and at the level of the citizens. In fact, the SDGs acquisition is strongly impacted by a physical context and require local and local and global actions. So trying to align political priorities in order not to leave anybody behind is key to partners like Modena, and Modena has decided to consider this very carefully. All the different components in the shaping projects have been analyzed with a view to reconsidering a new paradigm for a sustainable development that could apply at the city level. We can't say that it has been attained because also the regional context is still working on this, but also because it is a long process that has been impacted by the pandemic, but also due to its being multifaceted, it was very difficult to acquire it. Very first steps have been made in this respect in an effort to to promote a holistic, multi-sectoral, bottom-up participatory approach. And in more specific terms, attention has been paid to SDG 11, that is dedicated to the sustainability of cities. And the implementation of these objectives at the local level was considered more closely. The governance has been a key point. First of all, we have tried to carry out localization actions before and after the intervention, and then we have been working with civil society organizations, teachers, and also with the help of some teaching tools. Daniele Vacirca, who has been working on the summit instrument, the table game, will surely impact on the schools in Modena. At the same time, it was important how this co-education or co-training could be carried out with the local authorities. And a few years ago, we had already started reconsidering priorities that were based on local identification. So identify place-based priorities, driving better budget decisions linked with the holistic approach in an effort to avoid fragmentation in sectoral policies, concentrating on the synergies between sectoral policies, environmental policies, and so on. So the private sector has always been very important for Modena. It's been very important in helping the city, and as far as SDG 11 is concerned, we have conducted numerous projects with them, trying to reconcile public-private partnerships. So the engagement of civil society and citizens has not concentrated on the sectoral level, but rather it was an effort to reprogram everything together. The situation in our cities is a quite complicated one, and the OECD says that 70% of our cities have not yet achieved the 2030 targets, and that the SDGs, and in particular the ones mentioned today on climate, for example, or 7, clean energy, are still at risk and won't be attained by the year 2030 or under major difficulties. Now, taking a look at the measurement activity in Modena, I will tell you how to interpret this graph. The outer black line is the attainment of the objective by the year 2030. The yellow dots are the national averages. In the blue dots, instead, are the positioning of the city in relation to the different SDGs. It is interesting to note that concerning Objective 11, Modena is performing particularly well, and the measuring the distance to the SDGs in regions and societies that you can download from the web enables you to see for all regions and partners, as well as for cities that have not participated in this project but are interesting, you can see how important it is to bear this measurement in mind.
A Modena abbiamo considerato in qualche modo ci permette di lavorare su sfide.
Checklist and concrete challenges. Well, they require an all-encompassing approach, a holistic approach. We've been working on the necessity to realign political priorities, incentives, government targets. From national and international, they had to be transposed into a local measure. As Professor Boracetti mentioned before, we've integrated the SDGs into the budget processes. Once again, asked the questions of how data could be cross-matched, even coming from different sources, in an effort to realign the data coming from these different sources and utilizing the SDGs as a means to promote transparency. This is a checklist that I would like you to consider, especially in terms of clarifying our vision. I believe that starting today, partnership activities will have to be measured against these 5 areas: planning and of policies and strategies, multi-level governance, financing and budget, data and information, as well as commitment. So we can surely say that not all has been done. You see some possible lack of aggregation in relation to the policies and governance options adopted. So what do we expect from this perspective going further? This is the road ahead that we should continue. In the first place, we should consider the expectations that highlighted the fact that the Agenda 2030 is cannot yet be given for granted. We have to work in terms of raising the awareness of all the stakeholders, trying to involve everyone, educational policies, policies for civil society and for the volunteer sector through specific training activities. Here you can see a couple of stages and steps we have identified working on the single programming documents, the so-called DUPs that have been classified into major priorities. You see, for example, identity in terms of cultural policies, operational policies, safety policies. We also have considered environmental policies and smart cities policies. They have been grouped into sectors where we have smart cities and other topics. So the people who govern the city have got to reconsider the city with the view to these pillars. Now, the COVID pandemic has hindered the process, but we have decided to continue to invest in activities for schools so that they become sustainable. You can see a list of documents we mentioned before. The city of Modena is considering these in very much detail, in particular the pandemic and the next generation EU for the Modena city. New perspectives will have to be envisaged for the future. Let me thank you all for your participation and for listening to my presentation. And now the floor has ROPS with Monika Zembrinska, who participated as a partner to the project. So from Poland, we will listen now to a very interesting presentation. Monika, you have the floor.
Hi. Can I please put my thank you presentation? First, what I would like to say that I'm very happy that I can join this Versities Days, because this is the finish of our project and we did it for last 3 years. So we are very not happy, but very that we finished this project, but we are very experienced. And of course, this is because we had a lot of partners in this project, but also a lot of good practices and a lot of experience we can exchange between us. So I would like to say a few words about our implementation of Agenda 2030 in the future context. I would like to start from the one moment. I have to put, because I can see my point from this point of view.
Monica, there is a list of priorities, I imagine, and activities already done during the project. Can you see it? Okay.
I know that, yes, thank you. I just put my own to be more ready for this. One moment, please. I thought that I will see this on the yes, just put my own. Okay, so my first slide shows, because I was thinking about this presentation and what we did, but of course we all did those things because we had a common plan. But yesterday my colleague Anna also talked about this. So for me, it's like a sum up. Yes, what tools now we have to extend the ideas of Agenda 2030 and goals, and what we can use in the future to build the foundations for our regional governments and for Wielkopolska. So of course we did a lot of trainings. We did a local campaign. We through our tasks we were raising awareness about Agenda 2030. We did a national event. I hope that you also saw it, because we did, I think, something special. We danced the goals with the Polish Dance Theater. So this is for us very. We mixed the social things with the culture, but it was things we have learned from the project and from the partners. Can I ask for the next slide, please? It's not this one. It's about the social policy strategy. I would like to say that through this time, we tried to put, because we are the regional government, so we tried to put all the ideas of Agenda 2030 in our regional programs. So we last year we did the social policy strategy of Wielkopolska region, and we put the agenda as one of the main documents we will work on and work for to have all those ideas still in our region. So this is our achievement, I think, that we were able to underline one for the most of important group in our region now. So they are migrants. So we had a special plan and a lot of tasks and a lot of ideas for those group, and we've learned it from the Shaping for Cities project. And what we do for the migrant group, we till the end of this year, we also will have a special dedicated regional program to cooperate with migrants, to spread the help, to inform and to communicate and organize everything we can do for the better living and to better union for all people in our region. What is the heritage? I called this like in my presentation, what we have from the project. So this is sum up what I've already said. It's experience, partnership. We are left with a recommendation for internal changes because also through the project and through the agenda and through all ideas we've got from this cooperation, we would like to change also inside. So we in our institution, we also would like to keep a lot of those agenda ideas to be more sustainable in our institution, in ourselves, and through our example can change the Wielkopolska region. What we have from the project also is a recommendation for the future, researches and analysis, good practices, accessibility as a main issue. So this is also the very important thing now in in Poland and in our region. Regional program, tools and people. We convinced our regional government to hire a special person to take care for Agenda 2030 in the future in the regional, in the Wielkopolska. So we have this girl, this lady, this woman on our board. So we will cooperate with her to keep the agenda and all those, all our goals alive. I already said that we have a lot of plans concerning the inclusion of migrants. So we have, starting from the strategy, we did the creating working group with ROPS. So we have, since January, we are working on those plans. We would like to have a very big center for migrants in Poznań with a collaboration with all sub-regions, because we have 5 big cities in Wielkopolska. And we also start in many migrants projects, so we can also with our funds, but also with some projects and UE funds, build, I think, the better place for migrants in Wielkopolska. Thank you. In the end of my speech, I would like to thank for all project partners, and I'm very happy that we, as a Regional Center of Social Policy, could join this partnership, and I think that we can cooperate in the future. So I'm very glad, and thank you very much again, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Monica. I think it's very interesting, the results you obtained, and particularly, I think that having some specific policies concerning migrants in Poland is also very significant, I think, in this special moment. So thank you so much for being together in this our common path. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, now I give the floor to Veje in Denmark, to Annette Grundet.
Hello.
Hoping to pronounce correctly, otherwise
It's
please
fine.
correct me.
It's fine, it's understandable.
Thank you so much. Okay, it's up to you, Annette.
Yes, thank you so much. I will try to very briefly give you an introduction to the Agenda 2030 work we did here in Vejle. And first of all, I will try to give you a little context of where we stand. So In Vejle, we were part of the Rockefeller Foundation Resilience Network from 2013. And during that period until 2016, we made our resilience strategy, which was a political document stating how we wanted to work with resilience work. And there were 4 specific pillars. You can see them in the presentation, but it was co-creation, climate resilience, social resilience, and smart city work. So we covered a lot of the issues tackled in the sustainability and the SDGs and in this project. So we actually had begun already the work to adapt to these topics. Then in 2019, and I think maybe we begun in 2018 as well, we begun working on the climate plan. And this was again a political strategy which was officially approved in the City Council in December last year. But this was under a national project called Decade 2020, and the goal was to live up to the Paris Agreement goals. So this is actually an official document, a strategy in the municipality that is now something we're working under. So when this project came about in the middle of all this, we actually already had the strategic documents in place. And you can see here, I will skip this. This is some of the areas of the climate plan. But as you can see in this figure, we had official documents, and this Agenda 2030 plan was kind of playing up against the resilience strategy, and it was working with the climate plan, and we had actions to support the work with the climate plan in the project. But we chose to take an approach with this project and the activities and the Agenda 2030 plan to actually work with the people in order to support the strategic work. So we took a human approach, and we worked on building knowledge. We worked on giving education. We worked with changing the mindset of people and encouraging the change of behavior. So you might ask, why would we focus on people and not on policymakers and strategies? Because in our opinion, to change behavior, you need time and you need to change habits. As you can see from this little cartoon, we're training staff, we're still training staff, and we're still training staff because change doesn't happen overnight, and changing habits doesn't happen overnight. So in order to actually change behavior and have more sustainable behavior, we need to change habits, and humans are creatures of habits. So we try to use minimum brain power. We try to do the same as we usually do. And a lot of the actions that we do in our work and in our private life is habitual. So it's something that we don't necessarily think about. But in order to change our behavior, we need to start thinking, and it needs to be a conscious process. Every time that we try to implement a new habit, it takes constant attention. So that's why we focus on people and not on strategies, because people implement strategies. And one of the things that really helped us with this work was actually something called the inner sustainability goals. And this is not something we have developed, but it comes from a Danish Center for Inner Sustainability, which is located in Aarhus. And we came across them during this project. And they have these 9 inner sustainability goals. And actually in Danish, sustainability is bæredygtighed. And the inner sustainability is called væredygtighed. And that's actually a play on words, because være, which is the first of this inner sustainability in Danish, means being. So you have to be sustainable, and you have to have the inner sustainability in order to make the changes that is needed to create the outer change. So these goals are actually meant to be goals where you do the inner change. So there's a lot of the goals that works on changing your perspective, being able to see complex situations and see how things are mutually codependent on each other. But it's also about learning yourself, learning about yourself, and learning about being in this situation of constant change. So we used these to actually develop some activities that were very much focused on people. So we did a lot of our policy learning trainings. For some, we call them development consultants in Denmark. There's a lot of them in the municipality working, and they work with development issues, but they're also the ones who work with innovation and change and all these things. So we thought these were a very good place to start. So we trained them in, of course, the topic, the goals, but we also tried to make them reflect about their own work, use their own perspective, and bring in their own standpoints and positions where they are. And we try to do this in a very creative manner, using creative methods. You will see in the next images I have that there's a lot of Post-it notes. So this is just a way of brainstorming and trying to find the new that we're going towards. We also tried to make everything as close to practice as possible. So it had to be something that they could go home and do in their own organization with their own issues. And just make it something very applicable for them. We also had very cross-sectional work, so we had participants from all over the municipality, which meant that they started networking with each other. And this supports really the partnership part of everything, that you cannot solve things if you're working in silos, but you have to work together and make new partnerships because things are codependent. So this is a very important aspect of everything. So this way we took kind of an ambassador approach where we have these people out in the organizations and departments of the municipality working on sustainability and localization of SDGs in a very practical manner from bottom up. So this approach, they are really supporting a bottom-up approach where they support this strategic work that was already in action. So this way we are working very practically with the strategies that are already in place. And as I said, habit change takes time and it takes a constant reminder. So we actually also had a monthly newsletter going out where we just reminded people what was going on, that they had to focus on this, highlighted good examples, took inspiration from what they were doing and shared it with everyone. So this was like a constant reminder that things were going on and things were cooking in the boiler room. So really, the next I have is just some images from some of the activities. You can see very creative ways, brainstorming methods, trying to get people activated and thinking and reflecting. We had large and small events, but they were all very engaging. So just to say a few words of what our actual Agenda 2030 plans consist of, it's very practice oriented. It's not a strategic document that highlights the direction for the whole municipality, because we have those, but it's something for the single worker in the municipality to use. So it has information, of course, to support the strategies. It has knowledge from the project that we have collected, and it has an introduction to these inner sustainability. And I think most importantly, it has manuals for workshops. So the departments or the offices can do things on their own and put focus on topics on their own. So it's very step-by-step manuals for what they can do. So we're attempting to give material that can inspire and can be used locally. So I think that was all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Annette. Very interesting, this accent on practical activities, practical involvement, engagement. I think that it's completely in line with what is conceived as a global citizenship education. It's perfect in this sense, because what effectively also European Union is looking exactly is this way of engaging people and feeling them active. So thank you so much, Annette, for this this experience. Okay, at this point, I would like to pass the floor to Shkodra, Ilir from Albania.
Hello, good afternoon. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, we hear you, but we don't
Great.
see you. Okay, that's okay. Okay. Nice.
Buongiorno, buongiorno a tutti. I'm going to talk in English this time. Thank you for this opportunity to share with you our work, what we did in Shkodra, in order to make sure that we also have in place a proper local plan for the localization of the SDGs in the municipality of Shkodra. We initiated this work over the recent months based on the premises where SDGs are based, that they are universal, they are applicable to every level. So the involvement of municipalities is not only excluded from this process, but it's also very important in order to deliver for their citizens. And in fact, this commitment, this approach is applicable to every possible level of the society. It's not just the municipalities, it's not just the central government, but the whole society, the parliament, the civil society, the private businesses, universities as well are engaged and participating in this important process. So in order to achieve this plan, in order to implement the SDGs at the municipality level in Shkodra, we have also to make sure that these efforts fit with the local context, which is very important. And in the case of Albania, we have a strong commitment of the country toward the SDGs in order to make sure that we don't just have a clear vision on what we want to achieve through the SDGs, but also to make sure that we have the right institutions in place that are responsible for not only implementing, but also monitoring the progress made toward the SDGs. And at the country level, at the national level, Albania has done a modest work, a decent work compared also to some other countries in the region or elsewhere in the world, in order to identify the key priorities of the country and use the SDGs as a mean for achieving these long-term goals. And one of the challenges that we face in this aspect at the national level, but also applicable at the municipality level, has to do with the fact that establishing a proper long-term vision, especially one that runs in 10 years period of time, is a real challenge, and that's what during this process of the localization, that's one of the main issues that was raised many times during the discussions that we had through the work that we conducted. But in addition of the, and I will leave aside the discussion about the national context, in terms of the municipality level, at the municipality of Shkodra, there are ways on how the municipality can contribute to the process, not only through this participation and cooperation in the process of achieving SDGs at the national level, but also contributing, particularly in the areas where the municipalities have a strong role in achieving certain objectives for the society. From the other side, it is very important to emphasize that using the SDGs at the municipality level is also a way on how to transform the way the municipalities run, and that's the case of the municipality of Shkodra as well. So I'm referring to those policy areas where the municipalities have their full liberty in conducting their duties. For example, when it comes to issues like social protection, for example, which is well covered under some of the SDGs, there are shared responsibilities between the municipality and the central government. But when it comes to other policy areas, such as, for example, urban development or water supply and sewage, those are competencies that are fully delegated to the municipality level. And that's where the voice of the municipalities is much stronger in order to deliver for the citizens, compared to the policy areas where the government has its own responsibility or has shared that responsibility with the municipalities. So we need to take into account both the context, the national context where the SDGs are implemented, but also those priorities that exist at the local level. And that's very important to understand for every municipality, including that of the Škodra level. So this is where we started, and the training process for preparing the institutions that are in charge of this process was one of the very first things that we did from the beginning, in order to not only introduce all the responsible institutions under the municipality of Škodra about the SDGs, but also how to use the SDGs as a mechanism for planning and for achieving the long-term objectives that the municipality has. In this aspect, our work was very much facilitated by the fact that in the case of municipality of Škodra, we already have a local plan for development that exists at the municipality level. And some of these objectives for municipality of Škodra run until 2030, which made it easier for us to translate those objectives into the SDG goals and SDG targets. And this process, of course, started with not only the trainings that we did, but also with the identification of responsibilities that every institution in the municipality of Škodra has in order to achieve those specific goals. And we did that for every SDG, assigning direct responsibilities for which institution was in charge for achieving certain SDG goals and targets. Finally, we fine-tuned our work not only at the goal level, but we went further and we looked also at the SDG targets. That's something that we did in order to exclude from the process those targets out of the 169 in total, those targets that were not relevant for the municipality or that were not a priority for the development of Škodra. So we concluded with a list of SDG targets that are top priorities for the municipality of Škodra, and they are included in a number of SDGs, and I will not go through the list, but primarily SDG 1, SDG 3, especially SDG 5, which is about gender equality, but also SDG 10, which is about inequality, and 11, which is for urban development. Those were the policy areas that were identified as priorities for the future development of the city based on the national plan that we already have in place in the case of Škodra. Now, in order to localize those objectives and in order to implement the SDGs, of course, for some targets, it is very important to establish measurable indicators for the future, and that's something that has to be done where these indicators do not exist. We have to specify clear targets, what we want to achieve for 2030, and how these objectives will be achieved, by which means, which responsible structures, and finally, what budgets do we need in order to achieve those objectives. And last but not least, all this process has to be well harmonized, not only with the local priorities, but also other national priorities that have to fit with the national budget. So the very last task that we concluded in this process is that in addition of the plan that we created for the municipality of Škodra, we also created a working plan for how to localize those SDGs, which assigns specific responsibilities to municipality structures within the municipality of Škodra, but also other institutions that are within that municipality. So what they need to do in order to localize this process of the SDGs and make sure that they are the right tool in place for the vision of Škodra in 2030. So I think that summarizes what we did, and I'm open for any question that you may have at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ilir Chico, for this explanation, and also an explanation, if you want, of a sort of inductive process, because effectively reflecting on different already in place responsibilities for achieving the SDGs, it was very interesting to understand which kind of task each one can have. And this is very, very important to do some concrete changes in general, and also it's really appreciable the fact that you trying to align the priorities at several levels, exactly as OECD recommends. I mean, trying to find some common lines at vertical level among the different level of governance. So thank you so much for putting the accent in this sense.
Thank you.
And now I would like to pass the word to BRCT, Victor Pöde.
Hello, everyone.
Victor, okay, yeah.
Hello, everyone.
Nice to see you.
So, dear friends, let me start my presentation. I will focus not really on the localization plan, because this is a document that we also translated in English and can be, let's say, shared and used as a base for whatever developments might be useful. But I will stress the recipe to find a good localization plan. Let me explain something about the process, the challenges, and the result. So first, let me tell you that this localization process started with learning a little about Agenda 2030. It's something very new for the local administration. We per se are not administration, we are an NGO working on supervising European cross-border projects, but in the Shaping Cities project, we had a very valuable role to mediate Agenda 2030, to mainstream this into society, into especially policymakers. What was very useful in the Shaping Cities project was the training of trainers in Valencia, which helped building that expertise that was limited on the local level. The local administration was involved in a later stage when the localization process was somehow defined, or at least catched up. We consider that local political environment was some sort of risk or even a killing factor. Involving the policymakers too early was problematic for the adoption of the Agenda 2030 plan. And you know that in Italy, but not only in Italy, in Albania also, I don't know, for Croatia or Poland, but political debates can sometimes be very complicated. And if the process is not very well prepared, things mess up, to put it shortly. Premature administrative and political exposure could have been very harmful for the localization process. And we also took in account the political life cycles. So we prepared some sort of draft before the 2020 elections, and afterwards the draft of the localization report entered in a wide consultation with the political stakeholders. And the new county council adopted this localization plan, ensuring optimal political support as well as enhanced political lifespan of the localization report. So an issue was to select the expert for Agenda 2030 localization. This person was meant to write and to steer the whole process. And we were able to find the right person, a sociologist, with a good academic and also practical resume, a very very solid academic career. Also, a second line of work was constituted from the project experts trained in Valencia. So one expert from our organization and the other from the Iași County Council practically verified and adapted the first version of the localization report, and then the second and third draft, organized and moderated the multilateral consultation, managed the political consultation process, integrated the input from decision makers, and prepared the political document and advocated publicly for the adoption. Also, finding political support was another issue for the adoption of the Agenda 2030 plan. The leaders of the political groups, particularly represented in the county council, were directly approached. We mitigated political risk by presenting them directly to face-to-face meetings. And finally, the unanimous vote confirmed the validity of this strategy. This is a photo from the adoption of the Agenda 2030 plan in Iași County. We also had two multilateral meetings in 2 separate days. You see, it was the kind of working meetings that Agenda 2030 work naturally involves. Well, let me tell you very briefly about the plan. We had the first phase of the contract, the inventory of needs, finalized in December 2018. And the second phase of the contract ended in January this year. We had a localization report for the 4 SDGs, county level objectives in line with the 4 SDGs, and a set of local monitoring through adapted indicators defined. So in terms of targets, I will mention some issues. So regarding SDG 5, pay gap reduction for private companies, access to improved health services, especially health reproductive services, to limit the infant motherhood issue, also to increase women representation in politics, especially on local and county politics. SDG 11 is something that preoccupies everyone. So the problem of efficient public transport, better land planning, air quality in urban and peri-urban areas, and smart city component is something which was stated as a target. SDG 13 was also an issue where resilience, adaptability of local and county authorities related to risk to climate change and natural disasters. About SDG 16, a lot of indicators define the need to design better quality services for the protection of children's rights, as well as social assistance for people in difficulty, underage mothers, single-parent families, women affected by poverty, elderly women in rural areas or poor communities, victims of human trafficking, and abused people with disabilities or special needs. So there is a clear deficit of targeted social services in this area. Something nice related to SDG 16 is the promotion of good governance through participative budgeting. This was an exercise started by the municipality and then adopted by the county. And through the localization report, one of the measures regarding SDG 16 is to extend the participative budgeting to all the around 100 rural communes in Iași County. There is also a project portfolio developed for each SDG. For example, awareness campaigns for private companies to respect the principle of gender equality, because gender pay gap is a problem only in the private companies. We discovered that through statistics. Special training to police officers who can do better intervention for domestic violence, better social services, like I said, the creation of a county migration observatory. Um, and for the last words, let me tell you some lessons learned from the sub-granting and also from the localization process. So, younger generation is particularly sensible at, in terms of environmental protection. Online communication still remains optimal when life will get back to normal. Further effort is needed to communicate Agenda 2030 to decision makers, and the pool of experts, of local experts in Agenda 2030 issues can act as agents of change for the future. From our point of view, Agenda 2030 is not only the agenda of the administration, it's an ambitious process to implement Agenda 2030, and the business environment, the schools, the universities, the NGOs can all use this localization report, including their portfolio of projects. And the last sentence comes from the connection between the new programming period and Agenda 2030. In a way, this process will be more coherent. And I'm sure that every one of us will benefit from the localization exercise in Iași County that Shaping First Cities offered us. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. Very, very important, the accent you put on recalling strictly the impact on beneficiaries, for example. You mentioned clearly the target, women, migrants, etc. I think that the complex action plans you put in place is absolutely very important to influence and also to continue with the political support you need exactly on supporting further effort in this sense. So I think that you showed us effectively how much is complex to do this in a holistic approach.
It's a technical issue and should remain outside partisan debate, in my opinion.
Thank you so much again once. Okay. Now I pass the word to Forlì, Marco Buemi.
Hello, good morning.
Hello,
good morning to everyone. Hello. I will have my presentation in English, okay? So I represent the municipality of Forlì that is involved in this project since a couple of years. And I'm the expert, and we didn't finish to write the local action plan, but we have done a lot of things on the way, and I will show you a bit what we have done and what we are going to do in the next few weeks. Okay, I will run a bit for the first part because we are running on time, so I want to be quick. The first time is just an introduction of the 21-27 strategy, EU fund strategy, that is very linked also to what we are doing in Forlì, because what we are doing in Forlì, we are trying to work parallelly to the EU new priorities 21-27 budget and the recovery plan structure as well, to try to combine and to try to finalize projects that can be used for both the financial issues. So both for the 21-27 strategy and also for the recovery plan that is called PNNR in the Italian way. So we know that we have 5 investment priorities, but what I want to highlight is this next generation EU that is a very important plan for Italy and for the municipalities. We give attention to, of course, the main features are research and innovation, climate and the digital transition, readiness, recovery, and resilience. But what is the main important missions are 6 in the what is called in the Italian way the National Recovery and Resilience Plan. That is something that all the municipalities are looking to at this moment. We have 6 missions: digitalization, innovation, competitiveness, green revolution and green transition, health, infrastructures, education, training, research and culture, and social justice, equal opportunities, and territorial equity. I mentioned these 6 missions because what we are doing to write the local action plan is really linked to these 6 missions, because here are the money, here are the financial part. So we are trying to combine these 6 missions to the SDG goals that you will see later on in my slide. We started from the Agenda 2030, of course. We highlighted in our project FC 2 big issue for us is the SDG 5 and SDG 11. So we proceed in this direction. I myself wrote a research about Agenda 2030 to have this as a baseline for the municipality, for the deputies that work in the municipality, but also for all general directors and officers that work in the municipality. What we are doing is draft a document aiming at empowering the body and identify and obtain public funds. This is the main issue for us. We want to adjust the body strategy according to the international, European, and national strategic planning. As I said, we try to match the strategy together with the financial part that is linked to the European and national strategy as well, to both of them. So we can use the projects to link them to the European and also to the national strategy planning. We are doing a set of pragmatic guidelines and insert them into a long-term process identified in the SDG 2030. And then at the final, we want also to work with the communication to involve citizens and civil society, because as you know, without communication, I mean, you can do very nice things and very nice plans, but you have to engage, as you said also before in the main panel, you have to engage the citizens and the civil society and all the stakeholders involved in the city. What we have done at the moment, we have organized, we presented this strategy and the idea of the local document to the inside the municipality, involving the decision maker level, but also the officers that were involved since the first day. We organized in April a panel together with all the municipality, all the workers in the municipality. We launched the idea, we explained the idea, and we booked for all, May month, 3 workshops together with them in groups. We subdivided, I think there were a big participation from the municipality. More than 30 people were involved. We subdivided the people in groups, in 4 or 5 different groups, working directly with projects. This was very interesting because we went directly to the point. We tried to choose 3, 4 different projects from different fields. So culture, green, mobility, and so on, social, issues, and so on. And we try to go vertical and to have and to explain, in different steps what the city wants to do with this project. And this will be a very interesting part that will match the final localization document that you can see here in the slide. So the participants of the stakeholder was really relevant in this approach. We met them 4 times in 4 different workshops. We addressed the investment and we tried to adjust them according to pragmatic priorities set not only by the municipality but also following the European and the national organizations. We are analyzing the PNR, that is the National Plan of a Recovery Plan, and its mission according to the priorities identified during the workshop, as I explained before, with delegates from the city of Forlì. And this was really a concrete step to go. We defined the projects reflecting the mission. So now we are at this level of work. And now we are going, the next weeks, we are going to draft project charts together with participants, so together with the municipality and together with the people that participated to the workshop, to try then at the final stage to adjust the project with the SDG goals. So this will be for sure the final part. Once we have the project, we will match the project with the SDGs goals. In this way, we can go directly to the vertical line, and we can participate not only to the National Recovery Plan, but also to the European level, because this is, the investment will be done not only at the national level, but also at the European level. Try to match the projects with the sustainable goals, development goals. So this is the strategy, and we will work the next week on this strategy, and yeah, for sure you will have the localization document in the next few weeks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marco. Thank you so much, mainly for your alignment, showing this alignment among local strategy with the national and EU priorities. This was so clear in this sense, and it's important. We are just discussing in these days about these issues. So, and also, I think it's remarkable the involvement of all the categories inside the municipalities. It was a group work, if you want, not leaving someone behind, effectively. So I think it's important to try to spread the maximum of effort, but also results in this sense. It's important to keep in consideration the whole organization, and also for showing us analytically the process and the progress. Something is in course, but obviously it's clearly planned, and it's important in this sense. I think it's we have to be cautious, but it's important to have a clear path, at least. So thank you, Marco, for your speech. And now I pass the floor to Barbara Guarniero of Reggio Emilia.
Sì.
Thank you, Barbara. The floor is yours.
Buongiorno a tutti.
Buongiorno.
Buongiorno. Io presenterò appunto il contributo.
Good morning. I will present the contribution of the municipality of Reggio Emilia for the attainment of the 2030 agenda objectives. Reggio Emilia is a global city. For years, Reggio Emilia has been committed to various international projects, both twin projects as well as international relations at various levels and of various kinds. With shaping fair cities, we have therefore continued along the path of the internationalization of the municipality, opening up the way to other international countries, to other countries, while at the same time the project has highlighted a new perspective. In fact, we've had the involvement not only of the people working in the field of international relations, but also to involve everyone within the administration. We have therefore defined the local 2030 agenda objectives, as well as the localization of those objectives through a participatory project involving the entire citizenship. We have therefore involved the political, technical, and also the administration level. So they've had to work together on a series of different projects and initiatives. Everything started with the definition of the so-called 5 Ps, which was the initial imprinting that enabled us to define the policies and then get onto a further stage, i.e. understanding the 2030 agenda and its goals and the interaction among the goals and the policies of the entity. So with the new political mandate in 2019, we have identified 6 political lines with a view to linking them to the goals of the Agenda 2030, which was an upstream activity we had conducted in good advance. So we have realigned the objectives of the Agenda 2030 goals, and then we have tried to involve to the largest extent possible all the citizens on the importance of these objectives. This is a first step. This was a first step, and this is our document identifying 6 strategic lines connected with 23 goals of different types, say, for example, health, safety, and so on. So the city of knowledge and education, with priority being given to schools, universities, the city of ecological transition with sustainable activities, environment, or the city of attractiveness and internationalization, so linked with work and tourism, with the historical center, and then the city of economic work and innovation in a smart dimension, and then innovation in the municipality. So the working of the organizational, say, machinery, and then listing them all, listing these 6 strategic lines has made it possible for us to associate them to the single Agenda 2030 objectives. And this has been then implemented through single objectives and single specific actions on the ways in which one intends to attain those objectives and through which indicators. A major effort has been done in this respect, because all the indicators, impact indicators we have identified from now to the year 2030 will help us measuring the effectiveness of the objectives that the municipality of Reggio Emilia has set forth. And every single indicator has been linked with a 2030 agenda objective. also relying on known indicators. We have tried to stress the importance of each single indicator and how this enables us to measure the effectiveness of each single measure and the attainment of the 2030 agenda targets. This is the single policy document of the municipality, and you see once again the 6 strategic lines with the 23 objectives linked with each single line and their link with the Agenda 2030 objectives. We then fine-tune the activities in the course of time because, you know, when councillors, for example, identified strategic projects within their department, well, these projects, in spite of the fact that they will be developed in the course of time, then they become cross-linked with the 2030 agenda objectives. There are important projects concerning our city, priority projects, in fact, which are linked directly with the 2030 agenda objectives. So we have trained politicians, managers, administrators to help them understanding the peculiarity of the 2030 agenda. It's 17 objectives in total, but you know that in our municipality, when you propose certain projects and certain activities, you need to prioritize not all of them, not all the 17 objectives, but only a few of them that are more cross-functional and more interesting in that specific area. So training has helped us a lot in terms of being very, very capable of retaining some, synthetical skills and be capable of summarizing. In order to make things more operational at the local level and make things well known amongst the citizenship and help people to further widespread the objectives, we have organized an event addressing all the organizations in town, asking them to identify concrete actions for the dissemination and for the awareness raising of our citizens vis-a-vis these topics. It's been a very interesting process as the 13 different locally diversified entities have responded to this call for action. A cooperative of architects and engineers have participated, as well as Arci for social inclusion and other, like, for example, the Sindacato delle Donne, Trade Union of Women. It was a really cross-sectional, cross-functional activity. And the local realities have given themselves a framework within which they could work. Their activities provided a very thorough description of their tasks, but also we asked them to outline those activities that, according to them, were closely and directly linked to the 2030 goals. Here is a summary of the activities, but through the organization of events, shows, or other activities like sustainable consumption, gender equality, or improvement of quality education. and the possibility to enlarge the audience of all those people who can interact and participate in these initiatives.
Questi obiettivi. Ed infatti poi ad ogni
So this description of activities has been then associated with an SDG. This clearly shows how each stakeholder and local institution can contribute to the further dissemination of the objectives of Agenda 2030. Thank you all.
Molte grazie Barbara. Anche qui degli elementi di
Thank you, Barbara. A lot of interesting hints, this idea of global city, 5 Ps, and the emphasis on global citizenship. This idea of involvement, implication, and the cluster distribution of local bodies by carrying out actions with this multiplying effect. This is fundamental to further implement the process and to make it practical, close to the citizenship. So it's very important to update the strategic goals that you identified, and so an implementation and a direct involvement of what you call the cities of transition and education. It helps us in identify the different efforts. So thank you very much, Barbara. Now I'll give the floor
Jerkovic of Split. You are with us. Hi, Tony. Good, we see you. Please, go ahead. Can you talk?
Yes, I can talk.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. About the city of Split, when it's my turn, I will say I don't have a presentation, but I will quickly remind and sum up what we have done in these couple of years when the Shaping Fair City project started. So at the beginning, we were one of the first partners who started to make a local plan in our city, and we did that by doing 3 focus groups. In which we tried to call university actors, professors, different NGOs, from the civil society, and the citizens itself. We got a pretty good amount of people who came, and then by the survey we had as a part of the project, we told them what are the results and asked them what they think about Agenda 2030 and SDGs, and how they can help us to create some local plan. And that was the beginning of creation of the local plan. Of course, at the beginning it was a bit harder because we didn't have some kind of a concept about but the external experts help us to make the concept, and in the 3 focus groups we made some structure, and we made a local plan for Agenda 2030. Of course, when we made it, we sent it to everyone who was included in making the local plan, and they had the opportunity to give us the comments and give us the feedback about the deliverable which we made. And we just got some comments, but they were not so relevant since they were going too much in the detail in the details. So at the end, we have an action plan with the ideas what the city of Split should do, and there is also indicators what we should make and how, which firms, which institutions, which different actors can help us to make it on the local level. Of course, it was a problem because in the Croatia, the things work on the way that first, the national level, the government has to make a strategy, and then everything goes on the lower levels. And at the time in 2019, we were the first city who were starting to make a local plan, and nobody actually didn't get the Agenda 2030, and nobody was talking about it except one of the NGOs in the capital city. So we were kind of a pioneers. So we represented our project in the Zagreb, and we made a cooperation with different actors, and our decision was made that we will wait until the national strategy is made so we can adapt our local plan to the national plan in a case because we cannot accept that we as a local authority accept something that's not in the national plan. So we had to scale it, and finally, a national strategy for development of Croatia till 2030 was made in January this year. So our local plan could be adopted on the local level and will be a part of a development strategy for the city of Split till 2030. In the meantime, we are already doing everything by the local plan, and we are doing presentations and giving the people the feedback, and we are also, as I said yesterday, we put that in our sub-granting systems that people need to, when applying for sub-granting, they need to explain in which context they will help to localize the Agenda 2030. And I think it's really, really successful way it was. And even though at the beginning we didn't know where to start and how to start, at the end it went really well.
Thank you, Tony. I think that it's important we talk about also the challenges we had in our project. Exactly is the limit that we have to overcome. I appreciated it a lot, really. And also I appreciated a lot the wonderful hospitality you gave us in Split, I remember perfectly, and also the buses with the advertising about shaping for cities. Anyway, it was very visible.
Yeah, the bus is really, really visible, and nobody can say that they didn't know what are SDGs. It will drive all around the city on the different lines whole year, and we were very happy when you came, and we really did everything we could and what was in our power to localize the SDGs and tell the people. We were trying really, and it was hard at the beginning, but right now people are starting to realize what are we talked about when national government finally said, okay, we need a development strategy, SDGs and everything. So right now they figure it out, and we were at least 2 years in front of them. So it's hard when you are the pioneer, but at the end it pays up. You are ahead of something.
Yeah. And I think also that the differences among the different countries participating to the project is showing exactly also the fatigue you did in some environment that probably are already got, if you want, in others, but it's absolutely important. We have not to preach the converted. This is the main aim of GC, so thank you for this. Absolutely. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you to you, Tony. And now, last but not least, Pilar Sol of Alicante. Are you with us? Okay, wonderful.
Hola.
Hola.
Buongiorno.
Buongiorno.
Good morning.
Aquí por compartir y colaborar en este proyecto tan interesante. Para nosotros ha sido una gran satisfacción el haber podido hacer de forma visible el proyecto Shaping for Cities, promovido por la Comisión Europea durante estos 42 meses.
Grazie ancora.
Thanks again to all the project partners for joining us in this journey. It's a great pleasure to be able to work with the European Commission, giving visibility and showing the usefulness of the work carried out over the last 42 months of execution of the project.
El compromiso de Alicante con la Agenda 2030.
Il nostro lavoro è stato un
Our work has been a sign of our commitment to the 2030 agenda, so the commitment by Alicante.
Ok.
Bien, como ya dije, comenté, la redacción y la elaboración del plan estratégico Forjando Ciudades Justas ha sido el resultado de poder involucrar a los responsables políticos locales, a los funcionarios, a los ciudadanos, a las organizaciones y a todas las entidades de la sociedad civil, periodistas, voluntarios. Los hemos logrado incluir en todo este contexto.
So the drafting and elaboration of the strategic plan has been the result of proactive involvement by local politicians, officials, citizens, organizations, and entities of the civil society, journalists, volunteers.
A promover una gobernanza local de la inmigración muy bien gestionada, basada en derechos y sobre todo centrada en no dejar a nadie atrás.
Il piano ci
So this plan is helping us to promote local governance, a well-managed local governance of migration, leaving no one behind.
Bien, la actuación de Alicante, digamos que se ha centrado en 5 grandes bloques, que es Alicante social e inclusiva, Alicante urbana y accesible, Alicante próspera, Alicante integradora e innovadora y Alicante verde. Entonces, de forma transversal, en todos estos 5 bloques se ha estado trabajando no solo todos los ODS relacionados, sino que entre ellos hemos enlazado principalmente el ODS 10 y el ODS 100. Ay, perdón, 11.
Ok, l'azione di Alicante.
So Alicante's action focused on 5 major blocks: Alicante social and inclusive, Alicante urban and accessible, prosperous, integrative, innovative, and green, in a transversal way on goals 10 and 11.
Correcto, bien. Sí, efectivamente, digamos que también nos ha dado tiempo a incluir todas las acciones pasadas, la pandemia del COVID-19, y digamos que todos los planes, todas las acciones que hemos incluido en este plan estratégico ya tienen contempladas todas las medidas que se han tenido que prever durante todo este tiempo por la pandemia del COVID-19. De alguna forma, todas estas líneas de trabajo, digamos que han estado vinculadas para reducir las desigualdades y ha estado digamos, de alguna forma encauzado todo con el reforzar todos los bloques de actuación, especialmente logrando un Alicante social más innovador, más integrador y más accesible.
Per coordinare l'azione
To lead the action plan, the municipal council proposed the word Alicante DSDG, and objective 10 and 11 in particular were reinforced in a social and inclusive Alicante, urban and accessible Alicante, integrative and innovative. Thanks to this project and plan, the city of Alicante started to work on the sustainable development goals through a global planning of the entire plan called Alicante 2030.
¿Pasa slide? Bien. Sí. Para coordinar todas las acciones que han habido en el plan, el ayuntamiento tomó la decisión de utilizar el término alicantinización de los ODS. De esta forma, digamos que queríamos reforzar principalmente el ODS, el objetivo 10 y el objetivo 11.
Per coordinare l'azione.
So for this project, the municipal council conceived the term Alicantization and including different goals, integrative, innovative.
El que este trabajo se ha materializado en lo que es aquí en la ciudad, se ha materializado en planes tan importantes como la agenda urbana vinculada a los fondos Next Generation.
Grazie a questo progetto e a questo piano, la città di Alicante.
Thanks to this project, the city of Alicante started to work on the different goals by defining the plan Alicante 2030, and it is in particular linked to the Next Generation Fund.
2020-2023 de la ciudad de Alicante, en donde han tenido lugar una serie de mesas de trabajo y principalmente quiero destacar dos ámbitos que son los que nos conciernen, que es la inmigración y el voluntariado. En cuanto a la inmigración, ha habido una ampliación en los programas formativos, en los programas de sensibilización, información sobre la situación real del colectivo de inmigrantes para facilitar la acogida y la cohesión de los inmigrantes aquí en la ciudad. Por otro lado, ha servido también este plan estratégico para trabajar el voluntariado. Hemos introducido todos los ODS y todas las acciones que se plasman en este plan estratégico para trabajar, para desarrollar y elaborar también el primer plan estratégico municipal de voluntariado de Alicante.
So the inclusion plan of Alicante, inclusion plan 2020-2023, organized several panels concerning migration by enlarging programs of awareness raising and information about the situation of migrants, and to enhance reception and volunteers, where we introduced the SDGs and we implemented policies on Axis 6 for social inclusion, culture, education and youth.
Slide eje 6.
¿Cuál es?
Sí.
¿Así? ¿Esa?
Siguiente.
Siguiente.
4, 5, 6.
¿Esa?
No.
Esa.
Se ve que no está. El eje 6, no. Bueno. Bien, en conclusión, no importa, no importa. En conclusión, no importa, bien, no importa. En definitiva, el plan estratégico está al alcance de todos, todo el plan en el que hemos estado trabajando está al alcance de todos los socios del proyecto. Y bueno, lo que hemos hecho ha sido presentar una batería de actuaciones organizadas en torno a esos 6 ejes inspirados en los ODS, contando mucho con el tejido asociativo y económico de la ciudad. Para este servicio, la conclusión más importante es que entendemos que las personas migradas aportan unos beneficios muy significativos a nuestra comunidad, tanto en forma de habilidades, tendencias demográficas, en inversión, en diversidad cultural, en el ámbito laboral, lo que demuestra que la migración, por lo menos aquí en la ciudad, demuestra que es un recurso muy importante para el desarrollo de los países de acogida. Y desde este punto de vista, desde la acogida, es donde más hemos estado trabajando todos estos planes y todas estas actuaciones. Por eso quiero reiterar nuestro compromiso de vinculación con la Agenda 2030, con la implementación de los ODS impulsada por las Naciones Unidas en nuestra ciudad y, en concreto, yo creo que esto ha ayudado a que cada vez más Alicante sea una ciudad social, inclusiva y de alguna forma podamos a estas personas ayudarles a tener un acceso a una vivienda, a un empleo, a los servicios básicos, en definitiva, a que se integren. Muchas gracias. Grazie mille.
Abbiamo presentato.
So we presented a set of actions organized around 6 axes, inspired by SDGs and counting on the economic and social tissue. And this will give us an opportunity to our city, help to foster a cultural diversity, because we want to show that the employment and inclusiveness is very important for all the goals, and we want to reiterate our commitment as for the 2030 agenda to create Alicante as a socially inclusive city and help migrants cope to linguistic, legal, social, and administrative barriers. And the participation to Shaping Fair City project helped Alicante in meeting the main challenges of migration. Thank you very much for your support. Thank you very much, Pilar. Very important, in particular, the fact of talking about migration and volunteer, because there's a human dimension with an impact on policies that become a boundary is very important, because we need to measure what we do based on what and who is building up the context where we live. This is the meaning of this project, not just recipients, but co-active players of the environment where they live and where we live. Thank you. So to conclude, we would like to invite Mrs. Brancaleone. She is the person in charge of coordination service of European policies, replanning, territorial development, participation, cooperation, and assessment in the Emilia-Romagna region. So thank you, Mrs. Brancaleone. Just a couple of words of what we reached during these days, something that, of course, it's among your skills. The Emilia-Romagna region, for sure, in this phase is strongly proactive. the promotion and the release of guidelines for the localization of 2030 agenda, the regional strategy for the 2030 agenda that should be published by the end of June. The mandate program of President Mr. Bonaccini, who insisted, and his vice president as well, the Climate and Work and Employment Pact. All these initiatives demonstrate your involvement and your commitment that is highly appreciated by what we highlighted over these 3 days. Yesterday I had the honor of moderating a roundtable at international level, and we discussed how these topics are part of the agenda implementation and how it's important to monitor, to check progresses and to lead and coordinate these policies, because the OECD is saying that the fact of working top-down is not effective compared to what we do. So great of effort, and as the OECD is saying, so we have to change behaviors, to contextualize policies, and this highlighted a very challenging scenario. So from this viewpoint, what are you thinking about? Is it just a further step? Are you concluding this process? What do we have to wait for? I know that I can take the floor in Italian. I could speak in English, but since there is a simultaneous translation, I would like to take advantage and to speak in my own language. So thank you very much for this blended event. It's the first blended event, so I would like to thank the organizers and allowing us the possibility of finding during these 3 days all our project partners, the municipalities, all the public administration and bodies which worked with us in this development strategies. So very important days, and boosting our approach, and the fact that we started this project from a conception point of view in 2016, and then we had to build up the partnership network, and we are very happy to see that some of the remarks dating back to 4 years ago are still valid. As for the different planning tools and documents that are the outcomes of the work of the Regional Council, and 21-27 plan is the tool that we developed in our council, and it has the aim of creating the different cohesion and structural policies, so from social, territorial, and economic inclusion by considering the rights coming from the European Union through the regulations which will embody the policies approved at European level by our local